Learn to live without my money, Amanda screamed, her face contorted with rage as she tore my credit card in half and slammed the pieces onto my kitchen table. I stared at the torn plastic, the golden numbers now separated into jagged halves, and felt a strange calm wash over me. 28 years of motherhood had taught me when to fight and when to surrender. This moment called for the latter. "You're right," I said quietly, meeting my daughter's furious gaze. My simple response seemed to throw her. She'd expected tears, pleading, perhaps even anger to match her own. Instead, she got 2 words of apparent capitulation. For a brief moment, confusion flickered across her perfect features, features that resembled her father's so closely it sometimes hurt to look at her. "Damn right I'm right," she recovered, tossing her expensively highlighted hair. "I'm sick of you trying to control me, Mom. First you trash Dad my entire life, then you criticize my apartment, my job, my friends, and now you have the nerve to ask for my money? After everything Dad has done for me while you've just, what? Taught math to other people's kids?" Before I finish telling my story, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what time you are listening to me. Each word was designed to wound, honed by years of practice. I'd heard variations of this speech many times before, always featuring the same revisionist history where Jack was the hero and I was the villain. The irony might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. "I only asked to use your card for a week until my insurance processes the pre-authorization for my heart surgery," I reminded her gently. "But you're right. It was inappropriate of me to ask." "Heart surgery," she scoffed, making air quotes. "Convenient timing, Mom. Just when Dad's going through some financial difficulties, suddenly you need expensive medical procedures?" I touched the folder of medical documents on the table between us, the echocardiograms, the specialist consultations, the surgical consent forms, but didn't bother opening it. Amanda wasn't interested in evidence that contradicted her narrative. "I understand you're upset," I said instead. "Would you like some tea before you go?" "God, you're impossible," she exclaimed, grabbing her designer handbag, a gift from Dad that I had actually paid for last Christmas. "This is why Dad left you, you know. You're cold, calculating. You never understood him. Or me." With that parting shot, she stormed out, slamming my front door hard enough to rattle the photographs on my hallway wall. One fell, the frame cracking as it hit the floor. A family portrait from when Amanda was 7, before Jack's final affair had broken our family apart. How fitting. I sat alone at my kitchen table for several minutes, staring at the torn credit card. It was an additional card on Amanda's account, an account I had quietly funded for years. The irony of her dramatic gesture wasn't lost on me. She believed she was cutting me off, when in reality, I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. For years, I'd been making automatic transfers to Amanda's accounts, $1,200 for her luxury apartment's monthly payment gap, $800 for her car lease, varying amounts for her credit card bills when they approached their limits. All done discreetly, allowing her to maintain the illusion that she was financially independent or that Jack was her benefactor. Jack, my ex-husband, hadn't contributed a meaningful dollar to his daughter's upbringing since she was 12. His child support checks had bounced so regularly that my lawyer eventually advised me to stop pursuing them. His promises of college tuition had evaporated, leaving me to take a second job to cover Amanda's education. Yet somehow, in Amanda's mind, he remained the generous, supportive parent while I was the cold, withholding one. I had allowed this fiction to persist, partly because I never wanted to burden Amanda with the painful truth, and partly because I feared losing what little connection we maintained. If she knew her beloved father had effectively abandoned his financial responsibilities, leaving her mother to pick up every piece, would she hate him? Or would she simply hate me more for revealing it? I would never know now. After 24 years of shielding her from this reality, I was too exhausted to continue. My cardiologist had been clear. Reduce stress, focus on healing, prepare for recovery. The surgery scheduled for next Tuesday would repair my mitral valve, but recovery would take months. I needed to prioritize my health now, something I'd neglected for decades while supporting everyone else. My finger hovered over the banking app. One by one, I canceled every automatic transfer to Amanda's accounts. Next, I called my bank's customer service line. "I'd like to remove myself as guarantor from my daughter's credit card," I told the representative. "Account number 4728-9156-0033 4782. Of course, Ms. Wilson, I should inform you that this may affect the account's credit limit and status, as your income and credit score have been factors in establishing the current limit. I understand, I replied. Please proceed with the removal. After completing the necessary verification, the representative confirmed. You've been removed as guarantor, effective immediately. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, that's all. Thank you. I ended the call and sat back, feeling strangely light despite the ache in my chest, both emotional and physical. For the first time in decades, I was prioritizing my own financial security over Amanda's excesses. The 2,000 pluses per month I'd been channeling to her would now remain in my account, helping to cover my medical bills and recovery costs. My phone chimed with a text, from Jack, of course. Amanda always called him immediately after our disagreements. Marjorie, heard you're hassling Amanda for money. Low move, leave her alone. I didn't bother responding. In a few days, they would both discover the truth that had been hidden in plain sight for years. The thought brought me no pleasure, only a weary resignation. Rising slowly, I picked up the photograph that had fallen when Amanda slammed the door. Behind the cracked glass, our younger selves smiled at the camera. Amanda sitting on Jack's lap, me standing slightly apart, already becoming peripheral in my daughter's emotional landscape. Even then, I placed the broken frame face down in a drawer. Some things were better left unseen. Gathering my medical documents, I reviewed my pre-surgical checklist. Without Amanda's card, I would need to dip into my small emergency fund to cover the immediate hospital copays. It would be tight, but manageable. After a lifetime of stretching dollars to cover both my needs and Amanda's, covering just my own expenses felt almost indulgent. As I prepared for bed that night, I felt the weight of my decision. Tomorrow, Amanda would discover what living without my money truly meant. Though not in the way she imagined, the revelation would likely destroy what remained of our relationship. But perhaps, eventually, it might create space for something more honest to grow in its place. Either way, I had finally learned the lesson I'd been trying to teach Amanda for years. Financial boundaries aren't just about money. They're about respect, reality, and ultimately, self-preservation. As I drifted toward sleep, I wondered what her face would look like when she tried to use her credit card tomorrow. I woke the next morning to my phone buzzing angrily. 6 missed calls from Amanda within the past hour. 17 text messages, growing increasingly frantic and accusatory. I set the phone aside and took my morning heart medication, following my doctor's instructions to minimize stress before surgery. The irony wasn't lost on me that Amanda's financial awakening was occurring precisely when I needed to focus on my health. I made myself a simple breakfast of oatmeal with sliced bananas, the extravagance of fresh berries now a luxury I needed to forgo, and sat by my kitchen window, watching the neighborhood come to life. At 8:47 a.m., exactly when the bank would open, my phone rang again. Amanda. I took a deep breath and answered. "What the hell did you do?" Her voice was shrill, panic evident beneath the anger. "Good morning, Amanda," I replied calmly. "My card was declined. At Nordstrom. The manager recognized me. It was humiliating." The words tumbled out in a rush of indignation. "Then I called the bank, and they said you removed yourself as guarantor, and all these transfers stopped, and my account is overdrafted, and what did you do?" I sipped my tea before answering. "I did exactly what you told me to do. I'm learning to live without your money." "What are you talking about? It's my money, my account." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "Check your transaction history, Amanda. Not just the charges, but the deposits. Go back as far as you can. See where the money has been coming from all these years." Silence on the line. I could hear her breathing, rapid and shallow, and the faint clicking that suggested she was reviewing her banking app while we spoke. This doesn't make any sense," she finally said, her voice smaller. "There are deposits from your account, every month, for years." "Yes, but Dad said he was helping me with the apartment and the car. He said, your father hasn't contributed meaningfully to your financial support since you were 12, Amanda," I said gently. "The child support checks stopped coming. The college fund he promised never materialized. Every gift he claimed to give you, from your sweet 16 car to last year's Christmas handbag, came from my account. That's not—" "He wouldn't—" her voice cracked. I could hear the world she'd constructed beginning to fracture around her. Why would he lie? Why would I have lied? I countered. What would I have gained by hiding my financial support all these years? By allowing you to believe it came from him? More silence. Then, with renewed anger, "You're trying to turn me against Dad. You've always been jealous of our relationship. This is manipulation." I sighed. "Call him, Amanda. Ask him yourself about his recent bankruptcy filing. Ask him where he's living now that his condo has been repossessed. Ask him directly if he's been financially supporting you, and watch his face when he answers." "I will," she snapped, "and then I'll expose all your lies." The call ended abruptly. I set my phone down and gazed out the window. Mrs. Henderson from next door was walking her corgi, stopping to chat with the young couple who'd recently moved in across the street. Normal life continuing all around me while my own carefully constructed world of sacrifice and secrecy collapsed. I spent the day organizing my medical documents and preparing my home for post-surgical recovery. The visiting nurse had recommended clearing paths for easier mobility, stocking up on essential supplies, and preparing meals that could be easily reheated. Simple tasks that anchored me in the reality of my situation while I waited for the inevitable fallout. It came at 2:36 p.m. when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Amanda standing there, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, her confident posture crumpled into something smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen in years. "He admitted everything," she said, her voice hollow. "After I showed him the transaction records, he couldn't deny it anymore. He's living on his friend's couch. He's broke. He said—" She swallowed hard. "He said you've been covering for him for years because you didn't want me to know what a failure he was." I stepped aside to let her in. She walked past me into the living room, but remained standing, too agitated to sit. "Why?" she demanded, turning to face me. "Why would you do that? Why would you let me believe he was supporting me when it was you all along? Why would you let me treat you so horribly while thinking he was my savior?" I settled carefully into my armchair, suddenly feeling every one of my 62 years. When you were 8 and your father left, you were devastated. You idolized him. When his weekend visits started becoming less frequent, when his promises were broken over and over, I watched you try to make sense of it. Children need to believe in their parents, Amanda. So you lied to me. For decades, I protected you, I corrected gently. At first. Then later, when you were old enough to understand, the pattern was set. You had cast me as the villain in your story, the controlling mother, the one who drove your perfect father away. Telling you the truth then would have seemed like another attack on him. Amanda paced, running her hands through her hair in a gesture so reminiscent of Jack that it made my chest ache. So all these years, when I thought I was financially independent, or that Dad was helping me, I was transferring money to cover the gap between your income and your expenses, I confirmed. Your apartment is $1 in $200 more per month than you can afford on your salary. Your car lease is $800 monthly. Your credit cards regularly approach their limits. She stopped pacing, staring at me with a mixture of horror and dawning realization. And now you've stopped. All of it. Yes, because of what I said yesterday. Because I tore up your card and told you to live without my money. Partly, I acknowledged, but also because I can't afford to support 2 households anymore. My medical bills— Your heart surgery, she interrupted, her face paling. That's real? Not a manipulation tactic? In answer, I handed her the folder of medical documentation I'd tried to show her yesterday. She sank onto the sofa, opening it with trembling hands. "Mitral valve repair," she read aloud. "Tuesday. That's 5 days from now." She looked up, her eyes wide. "And I accused you of making it up. I refused to let you use my card for your medical expenses while you've been paying for my lifestyle for years. Your card that I pay for," I corrected softly. "But yes." Amanda closed the folder, her expression shifting as the full implications of her financial situation hit her. "I can't afford my apartment without your help. Or my car. My credit cards are maxed out." Panic edged into her voice. What am I going to do? I'd asked myself the same question countless times over the years, during my divorce, when Jack's support payments stopped, when college tuition bills arrived. Each time, the answer had been the same. Figure it out. Cut back. Work harder. Sacrifice. "You'll do what I've done for the past 24 years, I told her. You'll make a budget based on your actual income. You'll distinguish between needs and wants. You'll make hard choices about priorities. But my lease might need to be broken, I finished for her. There are penalties, yes, but living beyond your means has its own cost, as you're discovering. She looked so lost, so overwhelmed, that for a moment I almost weakened. The maternal instinct to rescue her, to smooth her path, the same instinct that had led me to this unsustainable arrangement, surged within me. But I remembered my cardiologist's words. Your heart can't take this level of stress anymore, Marjorie. You need to prioritize your health now, or you won't be here for anyone. So instead of offering financial salvation, I reached for my laptop. Let's make a realistic budget together. See where you actually stand. Amanda stared at me for a long moment, then nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Okay, she said quietly. Teach me. For 3 hours, Amanda and I dissected her financial reality. I opened Excel and created a simple spreadsheet, the same type I'd used to manage my own precarious finances after Jack left. 2 columns, income and expenses. Stark, unforgiving, mathematical. Your monthly take-home pay is $4,250, I said, entering the figure she reluctantly provided. Now, let's list every fixed expense. One by one, we added them. Apartment rent, $3,200, car lease, $800, insurance, $250, phone, $120, utilities, approximately $200, minimum credit card payments, currently $430 across 3 cards, streaming services, $75, gym membership, $185, and her monthly salon appointment, $320. That's $5,580, Amanda whispered, staring at the total. Every month before I even buy food or clothes or go out with friends. Yes, I confirmed. You're operating at a monthly deficit of $1,330 before any discretionary spending. But how is that possible? I've been managing fine. You haven't been managing at all, I corrected gently. I've been covering the deficit, plus many of your credit card charges when they approached the limit. The gifts from your father were actually from me. She leaned back on the sofa, stunned. So every month, I've been spending about, based on my bank records, approximately $6,800 to $7,200 total. Almost twice my income, she whispered. For years, I nodded. And that doesn't include the down payment on your apartment or the initial deposit on your car lease. Those were larger, one-time transfers. Amanda was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the spreadsheet's unforgiving mathematics. I could almost see her mentally rewriting the narrative of her adult life, the illusion of financial independence crumbling in the face of these simple numbers. Why didn't you tell me? She asked finally, looking up. Why let me live so far beyond my means? The question was fair, though it ignored her previous resistance to any financial advice I'd attempted to offer over the years. Still, I owed her honesty now. It started when you were in college, I explained. Jack had promised to cover your tuition, but when the time came, he had excuses. Business setbacks, temporary cash flow problems. I took a second job tutoring evenings and weekends to make up the difference. I sipped my tea, which had gone cold. You were so proud of him for putting you through college. I couldn't bear to take that from you, especially when you were thriving academically. Then, after graduation, when you got your marketing job, I insisted on getting the luxury apartment downtown, she recalled, wincing. You advised against it, said it was too expensive for a first job. You told me Dad thought it was a good investment in your professional image, I continued, that he'd help with the deposit. When no money appeared from him, I transferred the funds and let you believe it came from him. It became a pattern. Amanda ran her hands through her hair again, that gesture so like her father's. I was awful to you, she said quietly. Every time you suggested I was spending too much, I'd throw it in your face that Dad understood the importance of appearances, of living well, that your middle-class mindset was why he left. The old hurt flickered briefly. Yes, and all that time he was contributing nothing, while you were working extra jobs and living in this little house to subsidize my lifestyle. Her voice broke. What is wrong with me? How could I have been so blind? You were a child when the divorce happened, I said. Children create narratives that protect them from painful truths. You needed your father to be perfect because the alternative, that he abandoned his responsibilities to you, was too painful to accept. I'm not a child anymore, she countered. I'm 36 years old, and I've been terrible to the one parent who actually sacrificed for me. Her self-recrimination was painful to witness, but necessary. Years of financial enabling had contributed to her current predicament. We both bore responsibility. She for willful blindness, me for allowing it to continue. "What happens now?" she asked, gesturing toward the spreadsheet. "I can't afford my life." "No, you can't," I agreed. "Not as it's currently structured. You have choices to make." "What choices?" "The math doesn't work." "The math always works, Amanda. That's what I've tried to teach you. When expenses exceed income, you have two options: increase income or reduce expenses." I adjusted the spreadsheet, creating a new column labeled Revised Budget. "Your apartment lease runs month to month now, correct?" When she nodded, I continued. "There are decent one-bedrooms in Westbrook for $1,600. That's half your current rent." "Westbrook is 30 minutes from downtown," she protested weakly. "Yes. Many people commute farther for affordable housing," I replied evenly. "Your car lease has 9 months remaining. That's trickier to address immediately, but when it ends, buying a reliable used car would reduce your monthly payment substantially." One by one, we worked through her expenses, finding places to cut, downgrading her phone plan, eliminating redundant streaming services, replacing the exclusive gym with the community recreation center, stretching her salon visits to every 8 weeks instead of 4. "This feels like punishment," she said, staring at the revised figures. "It's not punishment, Amanda. It's reality. The reality I've been shielding you from. Most people live within their means because they have no choice. I gave you the illusion of greater means than you had, and that was my mistake." She was quiet for a moment. "What about your surgery? How are you affording that?" I hesitated, then decided complete honesty was the only path forward. "With difficulty. My insurance covers 80% after my $2,500 deductible. The procedure costs approximately $40,000, so my portion is about $10,000 plus the deductible. I've been saving specifically for this, but it will deplete most of my emergency fund." "And the recovery?" "The cardiologist mentioned 3 months before you can return to full work. I have some sick leave accumulated, and I can do limited tutoring from home after the first month. It will be tight." I didn't mention that the funds I'd been diverting to her would have made this period much more manageable. Amanda stared at the spreadsheet, then at my folder of medical documents, her expression shifting as some internal calculation completed itself. "I want to help," she said suddenly. "Amanda, no, listen, this is important." She straightened, meeting my eyes directly. "I've been taking from you for years without even knowing it. Now you need help, and She gestured helplessly at the financial evidence of her situation. "I have nothing to give. Worse than nothing. I have debt and obligations I can't even meet myself." I started to reassure her, but she continued. "But I have something else to offer. I've been researching since yesterday. Your surgery is Tuesday, and you'll need someone during recovery. The visiting nurse is only a few hours weekly. You need someone here." Her voice grew stronger, more resolved. "I'm giving notice on my apartment today. I'm moving in to help you through recovery." The declaration caught me completely off guard. "Amanda, that's not necessary." "It is absolutely necessary," she insisted. "Not just for you, for me too. I need to face reality, and part of that reality is that I can't afford my apartment. Moving in here temporarily solves 2 problems. You get post-surgical care, and I get breathing room to pay down debt and save for a more realistic place." I studied my daughter's face, seeing determination replace the shock and self-pity of earlier. For the first time in our adult relationship, she was offering a solution that acknowledged reality rather than expecting reality to bend to her preferences. "You haven't lived at home since college," I reminded her. "It would be a significant adjustment for both of us." "I know," she smiled ruefully, "especially for you, having to deal with me during your recovery. But I'm not asking, Mom. I'm telling you what's going to happen. For once in my life, I'm going to step up and be there for you, the way you've always been there for me." The irony wasn't lost on me that my financial crisis had created the first opportunity for my daughter to demonstrate genuine selflessness. Perhaps there was something to be salvaged from this situation after all. "All right," I agreed cautiously. "A temporary arrangement while I recover and you reorganize your finances." She nodded, then looked back at the spreadsheet. "So, about these credit cards." The weekend before my surgery passed in a whirlwind of activity. Amanda gave notice on her apartment, negotiating an early termination that, while expensive, was less costly than continuing payments she couldn't afford. She arrived at my house on Sunday morning with her essential belongings crammed into her luxury SUV, looking both determined and slightly shell-shocked. I left most of my furniture in the apartment, she explained, as we carried boxes into her old bedroom. The property manager agreed to sell it on consignment to offset some of the lease termination fee. That was resourceful, I noted, genuinely impressed. The Amanda of last week would have expected someone else, likely me, to solve this problem for her. She shrugged. Turns out when you tell people the truth, that you've been living beyond your means and need to make changes, they're sometimes willing to work with you. A rueful smile crossed her face. Though I did have to endure a lecture from the manager about fiscal responsibility that sounded suspiciously like things you've been saying for years. We spent the day reorganizing my modest home to accommodate her return. The bedroom she'd used through high school had become my home office and tutoring space, but we shifted things around to make it functional for both purposes. I watched as Amanda confronted the physical evidence of her downsizing, hanging designer clothes in a closet a quarter the size of her previous one, arranging luxury skincare products on a simple wooden dresser instead of her custom bathroom vanity. "I can't believe I'm back in this room," she murmured, sitting on the twin bed where she'd spent her teenage years. I was so desperate to escape it, to have a glamorous adult life like Dad's. I thought this house, this neighborhood was something to overcome, not appreciate. I sat beside her, noting how the mattress dipped under our combined weight. "This house kept us safe through some difficult years," I said. "It's not fancy, but it's paid for. No mortgage means freedom from a significant financial burden." "Another lesson I'm learning too late," she sighed. "My apartment was beautiful, but it was a financial prison. I worked to pay for it, then was too exhausted to actually enjoy it most of the time." I patted her knee, hearing real understanding in her words for perhaps the first time. "It's never too late to learn, Amanda. I'm still learning at 62. Later that evening, as I reviewed my pre-surgical instructions at the kitchen table, Amanda brought in a stack of envelopes and set them before me. "What's this?" I asked. "Every credit card statement I could find," she replied, sitting across from me. "I need your help understanding the actual damage." Together, we went through them methodically. 3 major credit cards, all nearly maxed out, plus store cards for her favorite boutiques. The total was staggering. $27,250 in revolving debt, accruing interest at rates between 18% and 24.99%. "I've been paying just the minimums," she admitted. "Sometimes not even that, when things were tight. That's when you'd step in with a transfer that I thought was, well, I made up different explanations at different times. A bonus from work, a gift from Dad, money from my mythical investment account. The interest alone is eating you alive," I observed, calculating rapidly. "You're paying over $500 monthly just in interest, not even touching the principal." Amanda nodded, her expression grim, but resolute. "I called all the card companies today. I've closed every account except my oldest Visa, which I'm keeping for emergencies. They're working with me on repayment plans, but it's still going to take years." I was genuinely surprised by this proactive approach. That's a significant step. "I also spoke with HR at work about picking up additional responsibilities," she continued. "There's a digital marketing certification program they'll partially reimburse. It would mean a potential promotion within 6 months." "You've been busy," I remarked, studying her face. The entitled, defensive woman who had torn my credit card in half just days ago seemed transformed by the reality check of her financial situation. She looked down, fiddling with the edge of a credit statement. "I've had a lot of time to think since Thursday. About money, yes, but also about patterns, how I've been repeating Dad's approach to finances, keeping up appearances at any cost, avoiding reality until it crashes down." I remained silent, allowing her this moment of insight without interruption. "He called me yesterday," she continued, "after I told him I was moving in with you. He tried to talk me out of it, said I was downgrading my lifestyle unnecessarily, that something would turn up financially like it always does." "And what did you say?" I asked carefully. A flash of her old fire appeared. "I told him that nothing turns up magically, that what actually happened was you quietly covering his broken promises and my excesses for years, that I'd rather live within my means than continue the cycle of financial fantasy he taught me." My chest tightened with emotion that had nothing to do with my heart condition. That must have been a difficult conversation. He didn't take it well, she admitted. Said I was turning into a penny pincher like you, as if being financially responsible is an insult. She shook her head. I used to think his charisma and big dreams made him special. Now I see he was just irresponsible, and I was following the same path. This level of self-awareness from my daughter was unprecedented. For years, Jack had been the untouchable, perfect father in her mind. My gentle attempts to introduce financial reality had been interpreted as bitterness or jealousy. Now, confronted with the mathematical evidence of her situation, she was reassessing not just her own choices, but the parental influence that had shaped them. Both paths have consequences, I said carefully. Living beyond your means creates a false sense of prosperity that eventually collapses. But being too cautious can mean missing opportunities or joys along the way. The challenge is finding balance. Amanda looked around my modest kitchen with new eyes. All these years, I thought you lived like this because you couldn't afford better. I never considered you might be choosing financial security over showing off. A paid-off house and an emergency fund don't photograph well for social media, I observed with a small smile. But they help me sleep at night. We spent the remainder of the evening preparing the house for my post-surgical needs, rearranging furniture to create clear pathways and setting up a temporary sleeping area downstairs so I wouldn't have to navigate stairs during early recovery. As we worked together, I noticed subtle shifts in our dynamic. Amanda checking if tasks were too strenuous for me, taking initiative without being asked, approaching problems thoughtfully rather than expecting immediate solutions. Small changes that suggested larger transformations underway. That night, as I prepared for bed, Amanda knocked softly on my bedroom door. "Do you need anything before you turn in?" she asked. "Pain medication? Water?" I read that staying hydrated before surgery is important. "I'm fine, thank you," I replied, touched by her concern. "Just a bit anxious about Tuesday." She hesitated in the doorway. "I called the hospital today to confirm I'm on your approved visitor list and to verify the surgery schedule. I'll be there the whole time." "You don't need to miss work. I've already arranged time off," she interrupted firmly. 3 days this week, plus I'll work remotely after that as needed during your initial recovery. The Amanda of last week would never have sacrificed work time and the professional image she cultivated so carefully for someone else's needs. This small but significant adjustment hinted at a reordering of priorities that gave me hope. "Thank you," I said simply. She nodded, then added softly, "I've been terrible to you for so long, Mom. I can't change that overnight, but I can be here for you now. Get some rest. We have a big day Tuesday." As she closed my door, I lay in bed contemplating the unexpected turn our relationship had taken. My heart condition, something I dreaded revealing to Amanda, had become the catalyst for long overdue truths and realignments. Perhaps there was a mathematical symmetry to it after all. As my physical heart needed repair, our emotional connection was finally receiving the attention it had needed for years. Tomorrow would bring pre-surgical testing, last-minute preparations, and undoubtedly more anxiety. But for the first time in decades, I wouldn't be facing these challenges alone or while supporting someone else. My daughter was stepping up, however imperfectly, to support me. It wasn't how I'd imagined our relationship evolving, but then again, life rarely followed predictable equations. Tuesday arrived with the sterile clarity of a mathematics problem that cannot be avoided, only solved step by methodical step. Amanda drove me to the hospital at 5:30 a.m. as instructed, the streets still dark and empty. I'd expected nervous chatter from her. She'd always processed anxiety through words, but she was surprisingly calm and focused. "Do you have your ID and insurance card?" she asked as we pulled into the parking garage. "Yes, and the medication list, advance directive, and power of attorney forms." I patted my purse. Amanda nodded, finding a parking spot near the elevator. "I've downloaded the hospital map and made a note of the cardiac waiting area. I have my laptop to work remotely, phone charger, and a change of clothes in case things run longer than expected." Her preparedness caught me off guard. This was a side of Amanda I'd rarely seen. The efficient, detail-oriented professional she presumably was at work, but had never shown at home. Our relationship had always been defined by her emotional reactions and my practical responses. This role reversal was both disconcerting and touching. The admission process was a blur of forms, questions, and repetitive safety checks. Amanda handled the administrative details while I changed into the hospital gown and submitted to vital sign monitoring and IV placement. When the nurse asked about my emergency contact, I realized with a start that I'd always listed my colleague Susan rather than Amanda, assuming my daughter would be too busy or unreliable to respond in a crisis. "My daughter," I said, nodding toward Amanda. "She's my healthcare proxy as well." The pre-surgical waiting area was filled with other patients and their families, all of us suspended in that peculiar limbo of anticipation and dread. Amanda sat beside me, her hand occasionally covering mine when she noticed my anxiety rising. "The surgeon has done over 3,000 valve procedures," she said quietly. "I researched him thoroughly. His outcomes are among the best in the state." I turned to her surprised. "When did you do that?" "Over the weekend." She shrugged as if it were obvious. "I needed to understand exactly what was happening with your heart and who would be fixing it." A warm feeling that had nothing to do with pre-surgical medications spread through my chest. My daughter had researched my condition and surgeon, a small act that nevertheless represented a seismic shift in her awareness of my needs. The anesthesiologist arrived to explain the procedure, followed by my cardiologist, and then the surgeon himself, Dr. Chen. Each asked if I had questions, which I didn't. I'd researched extensively before agreeing to the surgery, but Amanda surprised me again. "What specific approach will you use for the valve repair?" she asked Dr. Chen. "Traditional sternotomy or minimally invasive?" Dr. Chen looked impressed. "We'll be doing a right mini-thoracotomy, a small incision between the ribs rather than splitting the breastbone. It means a faster recovery, though the early days can still be quite uncomfortable." Amanda nodded, making a note on her phone. "And the expected hospital stay? 4 to 5 days if all goes well, then several weeks of home recovery before returning to normal activities." "Thank you," Amanda said, with the same focused attention she'd likely use in a business meeting. "I'll be here throughout, so please update me regularly." Soon after, the transport team arrived to take me to surgery. This was the moment I dreaded, not fear of the procedure itself, but of facing it alone. Jack had left long before my previous surgeries, a hysterectomy and gallbladder removal, and Amanda had been either away at college or too busy to provide more than a perfunctory phone call afterward. But today, as they prepared to wheel me away, Amanda leaned down and took my hand firmly. "I'll be right here waiting," she promised, her eyes holding mine. "Everything's going to be fine, Mom. I've got this." I believed her. The next thing I remember is waking in the recovery room, disoriented and in considerable pain despite medication. A nurse noticed my consciousness and approached to check my vitals. "Your surgery went well," she informed me, adjusting something on my IV. "Doctor, Chen was able to repair the valve rather than replace it, which is the best outcome. Your daughter has been updated." I drifted in and out of awareness as they monitored my initial recovery. Eventually, I was transferred to the cardiac care unit, where the first person I saw was Amanda, rising from a chair as they wheeled my bed into place. She looked tired, but relieved, immediately moving to the side of the bed that wasn't crowded with medical equipment. "Hey," she said softly. "You did great." The surgeon said everything went perfectly. I tried to respond but found my throat too dry and sore from the intubation tube used during surgery. Amanda immediately reached for a cup of ice chips the nurse had prepared. "Small sips," she instructed, holding the spoon to my lips. "They said your throat will be sore for a day or two from the breathing tube." I managed a tiny nod, grateful for the soothing cold against my irritated throat. After a few ice chips, I whispered, "Time?" "It's just after 4 in the afternoon," she replied. "You were in surgery about 5 hours. They'll be monitoring you closely tonight, but everything looks good so far." The next 24 hours passed in a haze of pain medication, vital sign checks, and brief moments of lucidity. Through it all, Amanda remained a constant presence. Unlike the frantic, self-absorbed daughter I'd known, this Amanda was attentive and calm, advocating for pain management when I needed it, helping me with the incentive spirometer I was required to use hourly to prevent lung complications, and keeping meticulous notes on everything the medical team said. By Thursday morning, I was more alert, sitting up in bed and able to take liquids normally. The surgical pain remained significant but manageable with medication, and my care team was pleased with my initial progress. "You're doing exceptionally well for day 2 post-op," my cardiac nurse commented as she checked the incision site. Having good support at home makes a huge difference in recovery. You're lucky to have such a dedicated daughter. I glanced at Amanda, who was working on her laptop in the corner of the room, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater rather than her usual carefully curated designer outfits. She looked up and smiled, catching the tail end of the nurse's comment. "I'm learning from the best," she said. "Mom's been taking care of everyone else for decades. It's my turn now." After the nurse left, Amanda closed her laptop and moved to sit beside my bed. "I spoke with your tutoring students' parents," she said. "They all send their best wishes, and Mrs. Abernathy's son dropped off a casserole for us to heat up when you get home." "That was thoughtful of him," I murmured, touched by the gesture from the family of one of my longtime students. "I've also set up a meal train," Amanda continued. "Susan helped organize it. Your colleagues and neighbors have signed up to bring dinners for the first 2 weeks after you get home." I stared at her, genuinely stunned. "You did all that?" She nodded, a hint of her old defensive posture returning. "Is that okay?" "I should have asked first, but you have so many people who wanted to help, and I thought—" "It's more than okay," I interrupted gently. "I'm just surprised. Coordinating help isn't something I would have expected you to think of." Amanda looked down, fidgeting with the edge of my blanket. "I didn't think of it initially. Susan suggested it when she called to check on you. She said you've organized similar things for other faculty members when they were ill." She met my eyes again. "You've created this whole network of mutual support that I never even knew about because I was so focused on my own life." The insight in her observation struck me. It was true. Over the years, I had built a community of colleagues, neighbors, and friends who helped each other through difficult times. Not with financial support, as I'd provided to Amanda, but with practical assistance and emotional presence. It was a different kind of wealth that had sustained me through the lonely years after Jack left. "Community matters," I said simply. "More than the brand of car you drive or the address on your mail." She nodded thoughtfully. "I'm learning that. The women I thought were my friends, the ones I shopped and brunched with, none of them have called to check on me since I moved out of my apartment. But your tutoring colleague Susan, who I've met maybe twice, spent an hour helping me organize support for you." This revelation didn't surprise me. Amanda had cultivated relationships based on appearance and status, just as Jack had. Such connections rarely withstood changes in fortune or circumstance. "Real friendship isn't about what you have," I told her. "It's about who you are, even when, especially when, things are difficult." Amanda considered this, then gestured toward my water cup. "Need a refill?" As she helped me with this simple task, I observed the careful way she supported my elbow, her attention to whether I was comfortable, small kindnesses that revealed a capacity for nurturing I hadn't known she possessed. Perhaps near catastrophes had educational value after all, both financial and medical. Sometimes we needed to be stripped of pretenses to discover what remained at our core. I returned home 5 days after surgery, exhausted but healing well according to Dr. Chen. The transition from hospital to home brought new challenges: pain management without the clockwork precision of hospital nurses, the discomfort of sleeping semi-upright to reduce pressure on my healing heart, and the humbling dependence on others for basic needs. Amanda had transformed my living room into a temporary bedroom, setting up a rented hospital bed by the window where I could see the maple tree in the backyard. She'd arranged my medications in a labeled pill organizer, placed a bell within reach for emergencies, and created a binder with my follow-up appointments, medication schedule, and recovery guidelines. "The visiting nurse will come tomorrow morning," she explained, helping me settle into the bed. "Until then, I've set alarms on my phone for your medication times, and I've downloaded that breathing exercise app the respiratory therapist recommended." I observed my daughter moving efficiently around the room, arranging items within my reach, checking that my water pitcher was full, all with a competence that belied her previous self-absorption. Somewhere beneath her carefully maintained image of carefree affluence had been this capable person, hidden perhaps even from herself. The first week at home established our new routine. Amanda worked remotely from the dining table where she could hear if I called, taking breaks to help me with short walking sessions around the house, crucial for preventing blood clots, but exhausting in my weakened state. The visiting nurse came every other day to check my incision, vital signs, and overall progress. Friends and neighbors dropped off meals as promised, often staying for brief, cheering visits that lifted my spirits. Through it all, Amanda managed the household with surprising skill, balancing her work responsibilities with my care needs and the practical demands of running a home. She wasn't perfect, occasionally forgetting to start the dishwasher or mixing whites and colors in the laundry, but her willingness to learn and adjust was remarkable. One evening, about 10 days into my recovery, I woke from a nap to find Amanda sitting beside my bed, studying a stack of papers with intense concentration. "What are you working on?" I asked, my voice still rough with sleep. She looked up, slightly startled. "Financial projections. I'm trying to figure out how long it will take to pay off my credit card debt if I put every spare dollar toward it." "And?" "About 3 years, assuming I maintain my current reduced expenses and put my entire year-end bonus toward the highest interest card." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's sobering to see how long it takes to undo financial mistakes." I shifted to a more upright position, wincing at the pull on my healing incision. Financial recovery isn't unlike physical recovery. Both require patience, consistent effort, and acceptance that progress isn't always linear. "At least your heart will be fully healed in a few months," she countered. "My financial health will take years to restore." "True, but consider the alternative. Without intervention, surgical for me, budgetary for you, both conditions would have eventually become terminal." She smiled at my analogy. "Always the math teacher, finding patterns and equivalencies." "Mathematics helps make sense of chaos," I replied. "There's comfort in knowing that certain principles remain constant, even when life doesn't." Amanda set aside her calculations and helped me adjust my pillows. "Speaking of constants, Dad called today. My heart rate increased slightly, a response the cardiac monitor would have flagged had I still been in the hospital." "Oh?" He wanted to know if I'd come to my senses yet, about moving back to a suitable apartment. Her voice held a new edge when discussing her father. Not anger exactly, but a clear-eyed assessment that had been absent before. "He offered to co-sign a lease for me." "That's generous," I remarked neutrally. Amanda snorted. "Generous with what? His credit is destroyed from the bankruptcy, and he's living on his friend's couch. It's just another empty promise." She shook her head. "I told him I'm staying here until you're recovered, and I've paid down enough debt to afford my own place. A place within my actual budget, not the fantasy one I've been living in." "How did he take that?" "About as well as you'd expect." She met my eyes directly. "He said I sound just like you now." He meant it as an insult, but I took it as a compliment. The simple statement brought tears to my eyes that I tried to blink away. For decades, Amanda had idolized Jack and rejected my values. This shift, subtle but significant, represented healing of a different kind than my physical recovery. "Anyway," she continued, reaching for a folder on the side table, "I've been thinking about what happens after your recovery. Obviously, I can't stay here forever. We drive each other crazy eventually, but I've been researching affordable rentals in the area." She showed me listings for modest apartments within a reasonable commuting distance to her job, places that fit within the budget we'd created together, with rent comprising no more than 30% of her income. "This one has a small second bedroom I could use as a home office," she pointed out. "It's nothing like my downtown apartment, but it's clean, safe, and I could actually afford it without supplemental transfers from anyone." The careful planning demonstrated a maturity I hadn't previously seen in my daughter. She was no longer expecting magical financial solutions or outside rescues. Instead, she was building a sustainable future based on her actual resources rather than wishful thinking. "It looks perfect," I told her sincerely. She closed the folder, her expression turning serious. "But I'm not going anywhere until you're fully recovered. That's non-negotiable. Amanda, I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't want to hold you back. Susan can check in on me, and the visiting nurse." "Mom," she interrupted firmly, "for 24 years you've sacrificed for me without recognition or gratitude. You can let me do this one thing for you without arguing." Put that way, I couldn't refuse. "All right." She nodded, satisfied, then rose to answer the doorbell. Another meal delivery from my support network. As she thanked the neighbor and arranged the food in the kitchen, I reflected on the unexpected silver linings of my heart condition. My physical heart was healing gradually, with each day bringing small improvements in stamina and comfort. But something else was healing too, the relationship with my daughter that I had almost given up on repairing. The financial truth I'd feared would permanently alienate her had instead created space for honesty and growth. Neither recovery would be quick or easy, Both would leave scars, the surgical one on my chest, the financial one on Amanda's credit report. But scars were evidence of healing, not just of wounding. They marked where damage had occurred, but also where repair had taken place. As Amanda returned with a tray of food, I realized that for the first time in decades, I was allowing someone else to care for me. Not perfectly, not without occasional friction, but with genuine effort and growing skill. Perhaps this too was a form of healing, learning to receive after a lifetime of giving. My financial reserves might be depleted from years of supporting Amanda's excesses, but we were building a different kind of wealth now, one based on mutual support and honesty rather than illusion and enablement. It was a more balanced equation, and as any mathematician knows, balance is essential for long-term stability. 6 weeks into my recovery, Dr. Chen pronounced my progress excellent during a follow-up appointment. The incision was healing cleanly, my energy levels were improving, and the repaired valve was functioning properly according to my most recent echocardiogram. You can gradually increase your activities, he advised. Short walks outside, light household tasks. Listen to your body. Fatigue and mild discomfort are normal, but sharp pain or breathlessness means you're pushing too hard. Amanda, who had accompanied me to every medical appointment, took careful notes on her phone. When can she resume tutoring? She asked. Limited hours, of course. I'd say another 2 weeks for in-person sessions, assuming continued progress, Dr. Chen replied. Start with 1 or 2 students, keep sessions under an hour, and see how you feel. This was welcome news. Beyond the financial necessity of resuming work, I missed my students and the mental stimulation of teaching. The extended recovery period had strained my limited savings, even with the money I'd set aside specifically for this purpose. As we drove home, Amanda was uncharacteristically quiet, her thoughts clearly elsewhere despite the positive medical update. Something on your mind? I asked. She hesitated, then sighed. The financial advisor called while you were changing at the doctor's office. I didn't want to mention it until after your appointment. My stomach tightened. Shortly after my surgery, Amanda had sought help from a non-profit credit counseling service, hoping to develop a structured plan for addressing her substantial debt. The advisor had been helping her negotiate with creditors and create a realistic repayment strategy. What did she say? She's been reviewing my complete financial situation, including the money you transferred to my accounts over the years. Amanda kept her eyes on the road, her knuckles whitening slightly on the steering wheel. According to her calculations, you've given me approximately $142,000 since I graduated from college, not counting tuition and living expenses during school. The precise figure startled me. I'd never tallied the total, focusing instead on managing each transfer as needed. Hearing the cumulative amount, nearly half the value of my modest home, was sobering. That's more than I realized, I admitted. It's more than either of us realized, she agreed quietly. She suggested I should consider it a loan rather than a gift and establish a repayment plan along with my other debts. I started to object, but Amanda continued. I agree with her. I've been thinking about this for weeks, actually. That money was meant for your retirement, Mom, your security. Instead, it went toward maintaining my artificial lifestyle while you continued working well past when you should have retired. We arrived home, but remained sitting in the car as she finished her thought. I want to pay you back, she stated firmly. Not all at once, obviously. That's impossible with my current finances. But over time, with a structured plan, just like my other debts. Amanda, that's not necessary. It is absolutely necessary, she interrupted, turning to face me fully. This isn't just about money, it's about accountability. For years, I've blamed you for being controlling or stingy while secretly benefiting from your generosity. I've resented your financial advice while depending on your financial support. The cognitive dissonance was, well, it was a form of self-deception I'm not proud of. Her insight caught me off guard. This level of self-awareness represented significant emotional growth. I appreciate the intention, I said carefully, but I never considered those transfers loans. They were gifts, however misguided my approach might have been. That's the problem, she countered. They were gifts I didn't earn, appreciate, or even acknowledge. Calling them gifts lets me off the hook too easily. She took a deep breath. I need to make this right, Mom, not just for your financial security, but for my own integrity. I considered her position as we went inside, and I settled into my recliner. The hospital bed had been returned the previous week. another sign of progress. Amanda's determination to repay me wasn't just about the money itself, but about establishing a healthier pattern in our relationship and her approach to finances. "If this is important to you," I said finally, "then I won't object. But I want realistic terms that won't create hardship for you while you're also addressing your credit card debt." Amanda nodded, relieved by my acceptance. The advisor suggested a token payment to start, maybe $100 monthly, with increases as my financial situation improves. She also recommended we formalize it with a simple written agreement, not legally binding, but as a symbolic commitment. "That seems reasonable." She smiled tentatively. "There's one more thing." In reviewing my spending habits, she noticed something interesting. My most excessive spending often coincided with visits or phone calls with Dad. This pattern didn't surprise me. Jack had always used material indulgence as a substitute for emotional connection. Even during our marriage, his response to any conflict or disappointment was to buy something, a behavior Amanda had observed and internalized from an early age. She suggested I might benefit from talking to someone about my relationship with him. Amanda continued, "A therapist who specializes in family dynamics. She says financial behaviors are often tied to deeper emotional patterns." "That sounds insightful," I replied carefully, not wanting to seem too eager about a potential reassessment of her relationship with Jack. Amanda nodded, looking both nervous and determined. "I've already scheduled an initial appointment for next week." The admission stunned me. Amanda had always rejected any suggestion of therapy, viewing it as an admission of weakness or failure. That she had sought this out independently represented a significant shift in her self-perception. "I'm proud of you," I said simply. She looked startled, then pleased by the straightforward praise. "I'm trying, Mom. I know 6 weeks of better choices doesn't erase years of self-centered behavior, but I want to be different, better." "Change isn't about erasing the past," I told her. "It's about creating a different future." Our conversation was interrupted by the doorbell, Susan arriving with groceries she'd picked up for us. As Amanda went to help her unload the car, I reflected on the unexpected journey we'd taken since my heart diagnosis. The physical recovery was proceeding according to medical expectations, but the emotional and relational healing had taken a course no cardiologist could have predicted. Later that evening, as Amanda prepared dinner, simple baked chicken and vegetables, a far cry from the expensive takeout that had once been her daily habit, I overheard her phone conversation with a credit card company. Her tone was respectful, but firm as she negotiated payment terms, neither entitled nor defensive as she acknowledged her responsibility while advocating for manageable conditions. "Thank you for working with me on this," she concluded. "I understand it will take time to rebuild my credit rating, but I'm committed to honoring this agreement." As she ended the call and returned to the kitchen, I pretended to be absorbed in my book, not wanting to embarrass her by acknowledging I'd overheard. But privately, I marveled at the growth evident in that simple conversation. The daughter who had once torn up my credit card in a fit of entitled rage was now methodically addressing her financial obligations with maturity and foresight. Recovery, it seemed, came in many forms, some involving surgical incisions and cardiac rehabilitation, others involving spreadsheets and difficult conversations. Both required patience, consistency, and the willingness to face uncomfortable realities. My heart, both the physical organ and the emotional center of my being, was healing in ways I hadn't dared to hope for when this journey began. The pain of both recoveries was real, but so was the promise of renewed strength and function that lay on the other side of this difficult passage. 3 months after my surgery, life had settled into a new rhythm. I'd resumed tutoring on a limited schedule, starting with just 2 students and gradually adding more as my stamina improved. Amanda continued working remotely most days, though she now spent 2 days a week at her office downtown. Our cohabitation had found its balance, not without occasional friction, but with a growing mutual respect that had been absent in our previous relationship. On a crisp October morning, Amanda announced she'd be out for the day. "I've scheduled a lunch with Dad," she explained, an undercurrent of tension in her voice. "We need to talk about some things." "Of course," I replied, trying to sound neutral despite my concern. Her therapy sessions over the past 2 months had been focusing heavily on her relationship with Jack, unpacking the patterns of emotional manipulation and financial irresponsibility she'd internalized from him. This lunch represented her first attempt to establish healthier boundaries in person rather than just over the phone. "I'm not expecting miracles," she added, clearly reading my worry. "Dr. Levine and I have discussed realistic outcomes. This is about clarity, not confrontation." I nodded, impressed by her measured approach. "You know yourself better now. That makes a difference in any difficult conversation." After she left, I found myself restless, unable to focus on lesson plans for the following week's tutoring sessions. My concern wasn't that Amanda would revert to her old patterns. She'd shown remarkable consistency in her new financial and emotional awareness. Rather, I worried about Jack's impact on her still-evolving confidence. He had always been skilled at undermining any perspective that challenged his self-serving narratives. To distract myself, I decided to sort through some paperwork that had accumulated during my recovery. Among the medical statements and insurance correspondence, I found an envelope I didn't recognize, addressed to Amanda, but delivered to our house, probably a statement from one of her creditors that hadn't yet been updated with her change of address. I set it aside to give her later, then continued organizing the papers until my energy flagged and I needed to rest. My recovery was progressing well, but fatigue still ambushed me unexpectedly, a humbling reminder of the major trauma my body had experienced. Amanda returned mid-afternoon, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't immediately decipher. "How was lunch?" I asked cautiously. She set her purse down deliberately, as if buying time to organize her thoughts. "Educational," she finally replied. "Dad was exactly as I expected, and completely surprising at the same time." I waited, allowing her to process at her own pace. He tried all the usual tactics: charm, deflection, minimizing my concerns. But when he realized I wasn't responding the way I used to, he switched to something new. She sank onto the sofa beside me. "He started crying, Mom. Actually crying. Said his life had fallen apart and he needed my help." A cold knot formed in my stomach. Jack's manipulations typically escalated when his initial approaches failed, moving through a predictable progression: charm, guilt, anger, and finally, when all else failed, vulnerability, usually performative rather than genuine. "What kind of help?" I asked carefully. "Financial, of course." Amanda's laugh held no humor. "He's being evicted from his friend's place, needs first and last month's rent plus security deposit for an apartment, about $4,000 total." "And what did you say?" She met my eyes directly. "I said no." The simple statement hung between us, representing a seismic shift in Amanda's relationship with her father. For her entire adult life, she'd responded to Jack's financial emergencies by either attempting to help directly when she could, or feeling guilty when she couldn't. "That must have been difficult," I observed. "It was," she acknowledged, "especially when he cried harder and said I was abandoning him just like everyone else. But then, something strange happened." She leaned forward, her expression intent. I felt this moment of absolute clarity. "I remembered saying almost the exact same words to you when you asked to use my credit card for your medical expenses." The parallel was illuminating. I remained silent, sensing she needed to work through this realization without my input. "I told him I couldn't help because I was dealing with my own financial recovery," she continued, "that I was working to repair the damage from years of living beyond my means. And then, this is the part I still can't believe, I suggested he contact a credit counseling service and gave him the information for the nonprofit that's been helping me." "How did he respond?" I asked, though I could easily imagine Jack's reaction to such practical advice. "He got angry, said I'd turned cold just like you." She shook her head. "That's when I realized, whenever either of us acts responsibly with money, he calls us cold or uptight or no fun. He's conditioned us to associate financial responsibility with negative personality traits." This insight, one I'd understood for years but had never been able to communicate effectively to Amanda, now came from her own observation. The power of that direct realization far exceeded anything I could have told her. "It's a manipulation tactic," I confirmed softly. "One he's used successfully for decades." "On both of us," she agreed. "But it doesn't work anymore, at least not on me." She paused, then added, "Oh, I almost forgot. Did any mail come for me today?" I retrieved the envelope I'd set aside earlier. "Just this, probably a statement from one of your creditors." Amanda examined the envelope, her brow furrowing. "It's from Midwest Financial Services. I don't have any accounts with them." She opened it carefully, unfolding the letter inside. As she read, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Mom," she began, then stopped, her voice catching. "You need to see this." The letter was a response to a loan application apparently submitted in Amanda's name 3 weeks earlier, an application for $25,000 that had been denied due to insufficient credit. What caught my attention, however, was the scanned signature at the bottom of the application form included with the rejection letter. It was Amanda's signature, or rather, a reasonable facsimile that wouldn't raise flags with someone unfamiliar with her actual handwriting. But having checked her homework for years and received birthday cards and notes throughout her life, I recognized immediately that it wasn't authentic. "I never applied for this loan," Amanda stated, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Never even heard of this company." "Could it be identity theft?" I suggested, though a sickening suspicion was already forming. Amanda was silent for a long moment, staring at the signature. "The lunch today wasn't a coincidence," she finally said. "Dad knew this letter was coming. He was trying to secure my financial help before I received it." The conclusion seemed inescapable, yet still shocking in its implications. "You think your father forged your signature on a loan application?" "I know he did," she replied with grim certainty. "Look at the address on the application. It's his friend's place where he's been staying, and the phone number listed as mine? That's his cell." My heart ached for her, not from my surgical incision, but from witnessing this painful revelation. "Amanda, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," she said, her voice steadying. "This is actually clarifying. All these years I thought he was just financially irresponsible, but this is actual fraud. He was willing to destroy my credit, which I'm working so hard to repair, to solve his temporary housing problem." She carefully refolded the letter, her movements deliberate and controlled. "I need to contact this company immediately to report the fraud. Then I should probably file a police report to protect myself legally." The rational, methodical response surprised me. The Amanda of 6 months ago would have been overwhelmed by emotional turmoil, denial, excuse-making, perhaps even blaming me for somehow turning her against her father. This measured approach to a deeply painful discovery demonstrated how far she'd come. "Would you like me to help with any of that?" I offered. She considered this, then nodded. "Actually, yes. Could you look over the letter I draft to the loan company? Make sure it's clear and comprehensive?" "Of course." As she went to her room to begin addressing this latest crisis, I remained on the sofa, processing what had just occurred. The revelation of Jack's willingness to commit fraud using his daughter's identity was shocking, but not entirely surprising. It represented an escalation of his usual financial exploitation, but followed the same fundamental pattern. What was truly remarkable was Amanda's response, the clarity with which she recognized the violation, her refusal to minimize or excuse it, and her immediate focus on practical solutions rather than emotional collapse. 6 months ago, such a discovery might have devastated her. Today, it seemed to strengthen her resolve to create healthier patterns in her life. My physical heart was healing according to medical expectations. Amanda's metaphorical heart, her emotional core and value system, was undergoing its own reconstruction, perhaps more profound than my surgical repair. Both processes involved pain, but both promised greater strength and function on the other side of recovery. The loan fraud incident marked a turning point in Amanda's relationship with her father. After reporting the forgery to the financial institution and filing a police report, difficult steps she took with remarkable composure, she made the painful decision to cut contact with Jack completely, at least temporarily. "It's not about punishment," she explained during one of our evening conversations. "It's about protection of my financial security, my emotional health, and my recovery process. Dr. Levine calls it a necessary boundary, not a permanent door closing." I nodded, understanding the distinction. Unlike Jack's dramatic relationship cutoffs, which he wielded as weapons when people failed to meet his demands, Amanda's decision came from a place of self-preservation rather than manipulation or retaliation. The weeks that followed brought continued healing, both physical and relational. By month 4 of my recovery, Dr. Chen cleared me for normal activities with minor restrictions. I resumed my full tutoring schedule, though I still tired more easily than before surgery. Amanda continued her credit counseling and therapy sessions, making steady progress on both her financial and emotional health. One crisp November evening, As we shared a simple dinner of soup and bread, Amanda broached a topic that had been hovering unspoken between us. "I've been looking more seriously at apartments," she said, stirring her soup thoughtfully. "The Westbrook complex has a one-bedroom available next month. It's within my budget, even with the debt repayment plan." Though I'd known this conversation was inevitable, I felt a surprising pang at the prospect of her leaving. These months of cohabitation, despite occasional friction, had given us the opportunity to develop a healthier relationship than we'd had in decades. "That's the one near the community college?" I asked, recalling her showing me listings weeks earlier. She nodded. "The commute to work is manageable, and the neighborhood feels safe. It's nothing fancy, but—" She smiled slightly. "I've developed a new appreciation for nothing fancy, but functional." "It sounds perfect," I told her sincerely. "When would you move?" That's what I wanted to discuss. She set down her spoon, meeting my eyes directly. "My 6-month commitment to help with your recovery will be fulfilled next month. Medically, you're doing well. But I don't want you to think I'm abandoning you if I move out." The concern in her voice touched me deeply. For most of her adult life, Amanda had made decisions with little consideration for their impact on others. This thoughtful approach to a potential transition represented significant growth. "You've more than fulfilled your commitment," I assured her. "My recovery has progressed remarkably well, largely thanks to your help. You deserve to establish your own independent life again, a healthier one this time." Relief crossed her features, followed by a more complex emotion I couldn't immediately identify. "There's something else," she continued. "Part of my financial recovery plan involves increasing my income. An opportunity has come up at work, a promotion to senior marketing strategist. It would mean a significant salary increase, which would accelerate my debt repayment." "That sounds wonderful," I responded, genuinely pleased for her. "You certainly deserve recognition for your professional capabilities." "There's a catch," she admitted. "It would require some travel, quarterly trips to regional offices, plus occasional client meetings in other states. Nothing excessive, but I'd be away for a few days every month or so." I finally understood her hesitation. "And you're concerned about leaving me alone during those periods?" She nodded. "I know you're doing well, but the idea of you being here by yourself if something happened—" "Amanda," I said gently, "I managed on my own for years before my surgery. I have friends, neighbors, a medical alert system if needed. You can't structure your entire career around being my safety net." "I know that logically," she acknowledged, "but I also know that for years I took your support for granted while giving nothing in return. The thought of returning to that one-sided dynamic feels wrong, even if the circumstances are different." Her awareness of our previous unhealthy pattern impressed me. Many people repeat dysfunctional relationship dynamics without ever recognizing them, let alone actively working to change them. "What if we approach this mathematically?" I suggested, falling back on my preferred framework for problem solving. "Let's identify the actual needs and potential solutions, rather than working from emotional assumptions." Amanda smiled slightly at my characteristic approach. "Okay, Professor Wilson, let's do the math." Together we analyzed the situation objectively. My current health status, good, with normal age-related considerations, existing support systems, strong community connections, and practical concerns, primarily transportation to occasional medical follow-ups when she would be traveling. "So the real issue isn't daily assistance anymore," Amanda concluded, "but having backup for specific situations and emergencies." "Exactly. And there are multiple solutions for those specific needs that don't require you to limit your career advancement." She nodded, looking relieved. "I can coordinate with Susan or your other friends for transportation when I'm traveling, and we could consider one of those medical alert services with fall detection, just for additional security." "Those seem like reasonable precautions," I agreed. "But I want you to take this promotion without reservation. You've earned it through your professional capabilities, and it represents an important step in your financial recovery." Amanda's expression softened. "It's strange. For years, I chased job titles and salary increases to fund a lifestyle I couldn't actually afford. Now I'm excited about this promotion primarily because it will help me pay down debt faster and eventually rebuild savings." "That's a healthier perspective," I observed. "Success measured by financial security rather than material acquisition." "I learned it from you," she said quietly, "though it took me far too long to appreciate the lesson. The conversation shifted to practical details: when she would view the apartment, what furniture she would need, minimal given her new budgetary constraints, how we would arrange the transition to maintain regular contact without the forced proximity of cohabitation. "I'd like to keep our Sunday dinners," she suggested. "And maybe I could still help with your garden on weekends. You shouldn't be doing the heavier work for a while yet." "I'd like that very much," I replied, touched by her desire to maintain meaningful connection rather than just obligatory check-ins. As we cleared the dinner dishes together, a small domestic rhythm we'd established during my recovery, I reflected on the mathematical improbability of our current relationship. If someone had suggested 6 months ago that Amanda would be living with me, helping with my recovery, addressing her financial issues responsibly, and maintaining appropriate boundaries with her father, I would have calculated the probability at nearly zero. Yet here we were, navigating a transition that acknowledged both independence and interdependence, a far healthier equation than the codependent dynamics that had characterized our previous relationship. Later that evening, as I prepared for bed, I found a small package on my nightstand with a note in Amanda's handwriting. "A thank you seems inadequate, but it's a start. Love, A." Inside was a silver pendant in the shape of a heart, not the stylized Valentine symbol, but an anatomically correct heart with its chambers and valves clearly defined. The card enclosed read, "For the woman who taught me that real strength comes from the heart, both the physical one you've healed and the metaphorical one you've always exemplified. Thank you for giving me the time and space to find mine." I fastened the necklace around my neck, the weight of the silver heart resting against my surgical scar, a poetic juxtaposition of the physical and emotional healing that had occurred these past months. Some mathematical problems have multiple correct solutions. Others require approximations rather than exact answers. The equation of my relationship with Amanda had never been neatly solvable, but we had finally found a balanced expression that honored both sides. Not perfect, but approaching a more optimal equilibrium than I had ever dared to hope for during those difficult years of enabling and resentment. On a bright December morning, 6 months after my surgery, and precisely 2 weeks since Amanda had moved into her modest Westbrook apartment, I sat at my kitchen table, reviewing my finances. The medical bills had finally stopped arriving, insurance claims were settled, and I could now assess the full impact of my cardiac adventure on my financial situation. The numbers were sobering, but not catastrophic. My emergency fund was depleted, and I'd needed to withdraw a small amount from my retirement savings to cover the final bills. The years of subsidizing Amanda's lifestyle had certainly left me more vulnerable than I should have been at 62, but careful budgeting would allow me to rebuild my reserves gradually. My calculator and spreadsheets, tools that had guided me through decades of financial tightrope walking, now showed a path forward. It would take approximately 18 months to replenish my emergency fund if I maintained my current tutoring schedule and continued my frugal lifestyle. Not ideal, but manageable. The doorbell rang, interrupting my calculations. Amanda stood on the porch holding a small potted poinsettia and a folder. "Early for Sunday dinner?" I observed with a smile, stepping back to let her in. "I had a meeting nearby and thought I'd drop this off," she explained, placing the poinsettia on the entryway table. "Also, I have some news." I led her into the kitchen where my financial papers were still spread across the table. She glanced at them, immediately grasping what I'd been doing. "Year-end accounting?" she asked, setting her folder beside my spreadsheets. "Just getting a clear picture of where things stand post-surgery," I confirmed, offering her coffee. She nodded, accepting the cup. "That's actually related to why I'm here." She opened the folder and removed a check, placing it carefully beside my calculator. "My year-end bonus came through yesterday. The check was made out to me for $5,000. I stared at it, then at her. "Amanda, what is this?" "The first significant payment toward what I owe you," she replied calmly. "My bonus was $7,000 before taxes. I kept enough to maintain my emergency fund and put the rest toward my debt to you." "We agreed on $100 monthly payments," I reminded her. "This isn't necessary." "The payment plan was a minimum commitment, not a maximum limitation," she countered. "The financial counselor advised allocating unexpected income primarily to debt reduction rather than lifestyle expansion." I pushed the check back toward her. "Your credit card debt should take priority. The interest rates are punitive." "Already addressed," she assured me. I negotiated settlements with 2 of the card companies and have been making accelerated payments on the 3rd. This, she tapped the check, is separate from that strategy. The methodical approach impressed me. No impulsive financial decisions, but a balanced strategy addressing multiple obligations simultaneously, so different from her previous all-or-nothing approach to money. Besides, she continued with a small smile, this isn't just about financial accounting, it's about balancing other equations too. I understood her meaning. The money represented more than financial restitution. It symbolized her recognition of the imbalance that had characterized our relationship for so long. By insisting on repayment, however gradual, she was establishing a healthier dynamic between us, one based on mutual respect rather than unacknowledged dependence. In that case, thank you, I said, accepting the check with the same seriousness with which it was offered. This will help rebuild my emergency fund faster than I'd projected. She nodded, clearly pleased by my straightforward acceptance. How are the calculations looking otherwise? She asked, gesturing toward my spreadsheets. Challenging, but not impossible, I replied honestly. The medical costs were significant, but I'm developing a recovery plan, financial as well as cardiac. Amanda studied my figures with newfound understanding. 6 months ago, she would have glazed over at columns of numbers or made dismissive comments about my obsession with budgeting. Now she analyzed them thoughtfully, asking relevant questions about my insurance coverage, income projections, and expense categories. You're still tutoring too many hours, she observed, noting my income calculations. Dr. Chen recommended reducing your schedule for at least another 3 months. The math requires a certain income level, I explained. Unless I want to further deplete my retirement savings, which would be short-sighted. She frowned slightly. There must be alternatives. What about online tutoring? Less physically demanding than having students here, potentially more efficient with your time. The suggestion surprised me, not because it wasn't logical, but because it demonstrated a creative problem-solving approach to financial challenges rather than magical thinking or avoidance. Another sign of her evolution. I've considered it, I admitted, but many of my students benefit from the in-person interaction, especially those with attention difficulties. A hybrid model, then, she suggested. Keep your most vulnerable students in person, shift others online, and potentially expand your reach beyond local students. The economics could work in your favor. Slightly lower rates, but higher volume and less physical strain. Her analysis was sound, applying business principles to my tutoring practice in ways I hadn't fully explored. Teaching had always been my vocation rather than a purely economic activity, but her perspective offered valuable insights. I'll look into it, I promised, genuinely intrigued by the possibilities. I can help set up the technology if you decide to try it, she offered. It's similar to the remote work systems we use at my company. This practical offer of assistance, using her actual skills rather than just financial resources, represented another healthy shift in our relationship. For too long, money had been the primary medium of exchange between us, distorting our connection and reinforcing unhealthy patterns. Our conversation turned to her new apartment and job. The promotion had officially started the previous week, bringing increased responsibilities along with the higher salary. She described her first regional office visit scheduled for January with a mixture of excitement and appropriate concern about the challenges. It's strange, she reflected. 6 months ago, I would have focused entirely on the prestige aspects of this promotion. The title, expense account, business travel. Now I'm thinking about the skill development, the networking opportunities, the long-term career implications. A more balanced perspective, I observed. Exactly, balance. That's what I've been missing. In my finances, in my professional approach, in my relationships. She gestured between us, including this one. We continued talking as morning shifted to afternoon, the conversation flowing naturally between practical matters and deeper reflections. No longer was I the concerned mother offering unheeded advice, nor was she the defensive daughter rejecting guidance. Instead, we were 2 adults navigating complex life challenges, each with valuable perspectives to contribute. Eventually, Amanda glanced at her watch. I should go. I'm meeting my landlord to discuss a minor plumbing issue. Very glamorous Sunday activities. Homemaking isn't glamorous, but it's essential, I replied. Something else I tried to teach you that probably sounded like outdated maternal nagging at the time. She laughed. Among many lessons I'm belatedly appreciating. The list is embarrassingly long. As she prepared to leave, I impulsively asked, "Would you like to come for Christmas?" "Just a quiet dinner, nothing elaborate." Her expression softened. "I'd like that very much. Actually, I was going to ask if I could spend the night Christmas Eve. My apartment will be, well, it's my first holiday alone, and I thought—" "You're always welcome," I assured her, touched by the vulnerability of her request. After she left, I returned to my financial calculations, now including her unexpected contribution. The revised projections showed a slightly more optimistic timeline for recovery, still challenging but less precarious than before. I found myself thinking about Amanda's suggestion regarding online tutoring. The idea held merit beyond just the economic advantages. It represented adaptation rather than sacrifice, finding creative solutions to changed circumstances instead of simply reducing expectations or depleting resources. Perhaps that was the most important lesson we'd both learned through this extended crisis: adaptability as a form of resilience. Financial setbacks, health challenges, relationship difficulties, all required adjustment rather than capitulation. 6 months ago, an unexpected health crisis had revealed financial truths long hidden beneath layers of enabling and denial. The initial confrontation had been painful for both of us, exposing patterns of dependency and resentment that had corroded our relationship for years. Yet, from that difficult beginning, had emerged something I'd almost stopped believing was possible: a healthier relationship based on honesty, appropriate boundaries, and mutual respect. Not perfect, we both still carried emotional patterns that occasionally surfaced in unhelpful ways, but balanced in ways that had previously seemed mathematically impossible. My physical heart was healing according to medical expectations. My financial situation, while strained, had a clear recovery pathway, and my relationship with my daughter had found an equilibrium I'd never dared to hope for during those difficult years. Some equations took longer to solve than others. Some required multiple attempts, revisions, and recalculations before a satisfactory solution emerged. But the fundamental principles remained constant: honesty with the numbers, adaptation to changing variables, and persistence through the problem-solving process. In mathematics and in life, balance was always worth the effort required to achieve it. Thank you very much for listening. Please leave a comment with a rating from 0 to 10, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with a friend.